This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
Save democracy in America. That sounds like a good idea. Well, the founder of this organization, the executive director, you heard him laugh because he agrees, Dan McMillan, a writer based in New York City. Dan, you were on last year. It's such a pleasure to have you back. Thanks to our dear friend Maria Sliwa. And I look at your history. You left your job at the Brooklyn DA's office to become a writer. You're not just writing, you're rabble-rousing. You worked with Target Smart.
That is right. I rouse the rabble, or as I like to think of it, I want to be the people's champion, because we, the people, have had our say in how we are governed stolen from us by big money in politics, and I want to help us get it back.
Well, and with Target Smart, we've spoken with folks from New Hampshire, actually this week on my show, talking about the primary process. We also talked with State Senator Reichert in the great state of Iowa, who switched, and we're not talking about presidential candidates, I know, but he switched his support from Trump to Ron DeSantis, like I have done personally. In Iowa, we talked about the caucus there and the process there, big deal. But you released polls, and you did some polling and then released the numbers in the great state of New Hampshire, which is actually a really important state to measure what people are thinking. Now Sununu news out. I hope Kelly Ayotte wins the gubernatorial race there. New Hampshire is a vibrant place to not just poll people, but to glean a perspective of how they're thinking. That's what you did. So let's talk about that. When did you decide to poll New Hampshire voters, and what did you find?
So we decided at the beginning of June, and we commissioned Target Smart, which is a top-notch polling firm, and we did a detailed poll with a large sample size, 700, June 20th to 25th, and we asked them about, are you satisfied with American politics? Everyone says no. Then asked them a bunch of questions about what bothered them the most about American politics, and the biggest answer was hyper-partisanship, partisan anger, bickering. We asked them a bunch of questions about money in politics, and we found across the board, Democrat, Independent, Republican, sky-high outrage over the amount of money in politics, how rare it comes in, what it does to our country, and then we test drove a series of messages that we want to use to persuade people to support voter-owned elections, which is the most promising path to game-changing campaign finance reform, to breaking the stranglehold of money in politics. That's what we advocate. My New Hampshire allies and I are making a full-court press in New Hampshire to build support for voter-owned elections, and this poll tells us where we are and helps us hone the message and the strategy.
Wow, it's huge. Folks, you can go to savedemocracyinamerica.org. You can learn about Dan, his background, and you can see what they're up to and how they're partnering with Target Smart. And in your opinion, and I won't mention names, but I've spoken with and texted with friends in Minnesota, in Seattle, Iowa, places where I said, hey, you got to listen to this interview with Dan McMillan and what they're finding in terms of attitude in New Hampshire. And the attitude is there's corruption. Trump talked about this, and others have, and sometimes it's been deflated and proven wrong, other times not. But this notion of paying for someone to vote and inciting them to be active, my buddies, my friends that I've texted, they don't support that. What is the idea? Because Murray and I talked about this, your publicist or your PR pro. What's the idea of paying for a vote? Not in a negative way, but in a way to, See,
like, are you talking about the voter-owned elections plan we've got?
Yes.
Okay, well, because it's not quite paying someone to vote. What it is, the premise is, look, the only people who really have much say in Washington anymore are high-dollar campaign donors, and that being the case, we got to make ourselves the donors. And, right now, a lot of Americans, the Americans who can afford to, are giving small-dollar donations to at least the top sort of candidates at the national level. What we want to do is make that a possibility for every registered voter. And so the idea is that for every federal 2-year cycle, every registered voter gets an online account of campaign cash. You can't take it out and spend it, but you go online and assign it to the candidates that you want to support.
I see.
And that way, candidates get okay.
Yeah, that
so
makes sense.
The candidates will get their campaign cash from us instead of from Big Pharma, Big Oil, George Soros, Charles Koch, whoever, and that means that they can serve us, which we like to think is what they'd really like to do. But, the cost of federal election campaigns more than doubled from 2016 to 2020. The midterms shattered previous records. They keep getting more expensive now. Fundraising is the main part of their job. Our members of Congress are basically overpaid telemarketers because they spend all their time on the phone dialing for dollars for the next reelection campaign. This way, at a minimum, it levels the playing field so that candidates who want to serve us can get the cash they need from us to mount a credible, expensive campaign. And on the other hand, their opponent is not going to have such a great excuse for taking money from these special interests anymore.
Okay, so if you look, Dan, if you look at like California, where it's like low 21, 22 million registered voters, how would that work? Would the federal government deposit this? I mean, it would be infrastructurally, it would be complicated technologically to put together. That the idea is that candidates couldn't raise money from us. See, I don't know if I love that. Because between
really, what don't you like about it, Tom?
I like the idea of good old-fashioned fundraising. Now you're talking federal, I get that, but when I was a state representative in East Anchorage, up here in Alaska,
okay,
I would go hat in hand, humbly talk to folks in the restaurant industry, in the home building industry. The max was only $500. Often I didn't get that much, but I would say, would you donate to my campaign? I'm putting my own money in, but it's going to be $50,000 or $100,000 to do TV ads and radio. Would you donate?
Yeah.
Would you come to my fundraiser? There was nothing suspicious or awkward. If voters only had $20, let's say, how would I try to curry or solicit respectfully their favor to donate to me? I mean, that would be a nightmare. Many people.
I think the way that it works, Tom, is that candidates, reach out to the voters, and obviously you're not going to be able, especially for like a congressional district or a Senate run, you don't reach the voters individually as much, but you hold rallies in your district and you give media interviews, and instead of just giving the voters empty slogans, which is what we get from both parties today in Washington, you give them real concrete ideas, practical solutions to the country's problems. I mean, what you're talking about, I would just emphasize two things. You said a while ago in the past and at the local level. In that scenario, the money wasn't as critical. You didn't have to raise as much. You could do it face-to-face.
No, it's a good delineation because your point is apples to oranges, Tommy, because it's Congress versus a little state house seat in Anchorage with pet on the head. That's fair. That is fair because it's much smaller. And you're targeting the federal level. Well,
that's right.
In terms of New Hampshire, what was you told me the numbers literally, but what did the Target Smart folks who deployed the poll, what did they say? It would seem like New Hampshire is a thoughtful place to poll. Believe me, I polled in other states where they're not so pleasant. New Hampshire, they seem, Iowa's the same. They seem ready to answer polls. Is that fair?
I think that's right. And altogether, I've been up to New Hampshire a lot. I've already made 4 trips this year to speak at Rotary clubs and mostly Rotary clubs and a lot of in-person interaction. I think the people of New Hampshire, a couple of things that's distinctive to New Hampshire. One is, like the people in Iowa, they take very seriously the responsibility they have to help pick the presidents. And secondly, in New Hampshire, they place a lot of value on face-to-face interaction and on conversation. They don't go for the 30-second manipulative TV ad. They go for someone talking to them as an adult with an argument. And that's why they're elected.
Stick with us because we got to go to a break.
Absolutely.
But before we go to the break, I'm smitten by Dan. This dude is a rock climber. He's climbed El Capitan 3 times. He wrote a book. How could this happen? A book about the Holocaust. It's so appropriate, especially in today's societal climate where we have people attacking each other. I'm going to actually buy your book this weekend. How could this happen? You can also go to drdanmcmillan.com. I'll put that link on my Tom Anderson Show Facebook page. We're going to come back. We're going to talk more about politics. We're going to learn about SaveDemocracyInAmerica.org, how you can donate, how you can join their email list. Easy squeezy. Dan McMillan stays with us right here on the Tom Anderson Show.
This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
We are back, SaveDemocracyInAmerica.org. I encourage you to follow that website. And Professor Dan McMillan. Dan, on the break, we always engage when you call in. I love it. And we were talking about poll results and the dynamic, how important you feel targeting New Hampshire in this case, and what you found, a perspective that gives you hope. So let's get into that so the public, because by the way, Alaskans listening, driving to work from home, out of state, lower 48 listeners that are in Washington State, Texas, New Hampshire, New Jersey, they may get a better understanding of why polling is important and why the nation's perspective, I think, is changing. And I think you're helping promote that. So in terms of the poll results, what were some aspects of the numbers that encouraged you?
Perhaps the best was, well, two things. First, we asked them, are you satisfied with the state of American politics? 93% across the board politically say no. Then we had an open-ended question, tell us what bothers you the most, and what they volunteered, 29% volunteered, was they're fed up with excessive partisan anger, polarization, the inability of the parties to work together. And I have always felt that so much of the divisiveness in our politics is driven by politicians for their own purposes and that the money's behind it. And the point of unity I found in the polls, where I think the common ground is to help meet this desire for less anger and to bring us together, is the ideals which make us Americans, especially government by the people. And we had two questions that were just alternate versions of the same question, basically the proposition that government by the people is one of the ideals that the United States of America stands for, which make us Americans. And this money-driven politics, where money has stolen our say in how we are governed, this is un-American. It's unpatriotic. It makes a mockery of the ideals that our country stands for. 90%, 88% support for these two respective wordings. So, and that's really what drives me in what I'm doing. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning to do this, is my belief is really that the greatness of our country consists above all in the commitment of Americans to these noble ideals. And what I see is, look, you want to know how we bring Americans together? I think it's staring us right in the face. Get back to basics. Get back to the ideals that we all agree on. And, I'm not talking about a kumbaya moment where we stop fighting for our convictions. I'm not suggesting that anyone on either side of the aisle fight any less hard for what they believe in on specific policies. But on the other hand, let's not forget, we all live in a country unlike any other, a country that stands for ideals. And this is something to celebrate. This is what we have in common. And I think our agreement on that is a lot more important than any disagreement we have about any other issue. And I think this poll really supported that. It's one of my reasons for my confidence that we will turn this around and take our country back.
Fair enough. When I look at your history in terms of academics and authorship, do you reside on the East Coast? I mean, I don't need your address, but I mean, if you don't mind telling me, where do you live?
Just don't ask my Social Security number on air.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. What's your pin code?
And I'm not going to wire you any money.
Damn it.
No, I live in New York City, Upper West Side of Manhattan.
The Big Apple, one of my favorite cities on earth. But and that being said, what is your opinion of New York City voters with ranked choice voting, with Maria's brother did such a good job running for mayor? There's just a frustration. By the way, Dan, not just New York City. How about L.A.? How about San Francisco? How about Atlanta? We're seeing it, Detroit, across the nation, Minneapolis, where I went to law school in a conservative rural belt. My farming family are conservative. Then you get to Minneapolis, Twin Cities, and it's like, what in the heck happened here? Not getting into Republican or Democrat politics, but what's your feeling on the American voter and kind of the profile? Are we becoming more conservative, less conservative, or more humanist? More about the person and having a better nation than what your party affiliation is? What is your glimpse on that?
I think that what I am continuously impressed with when I talk with Americans all over the country, and in New York City, people think of New York City as this liberal monolith. It's not. You got I know plenty of Republicans here, including one of my closest friends. I myself am nonpartisan, strictly, but
by the way, which is good. I'm glad you didn't say I'm the head of my Republican Party in the neighborhood, because people would say crap. I was infatuated with Professor McMillan, but now I'm not because he's biased. So I'm glad you're nonpartisan.
No, and not only in my public statements, in my private conduct, and I tell you, once I took off the Democratic spectacles I've been carrying around for a while, I could see that there was just as much that I dislike in the Democratic Party, that is not in the voters, but I'm talking about the level of national media and national politicians, as the criticisms I have of the GOP. Both parties are failing us. What I see again and again, Tom, that shines through is the fundamental decency of the American people, our fundamental kindness and generosity, and our capacity for idealism, which you cannot find in any other country. And I know this because I've studied German history, and I compare these other countries to us. And what I also see, people in Washington, they think that we're children. They scold us for not being better informed. But the American people have long understood something that the people in D.C. still don't get, which is the system is not working. We are not being represented in Washington. Our government does not serve us. And for years, we have been saying we want change. And we've been giving support to candidates who promise fundamental change. Obama in 08, in 16, both Trump and Sanders, in 20, Sanders and Warren. But none of those candidates gave a concrete path to change, and the reason was what needs to be changed is money in politics. And we think that this voter-owned election system is the missing ingredient. This is the missing plan for change, the missing actionable demand to crystallize the American people's frustration with the system, which is totally bipartisan. On both sides of the aisle, you've got most Americans saying, this isn't working, I want something different, and we're here to say, well, this is how we get to something different. And that's why I'm confident we're going to win. I think the American people are ready for this message.
I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, we have to get to this. First of all, Dan sounds like professorial, academic, smart guy. You don't want to get in a bar fight with Dan McMillan. He's going to say, where's this going? How about Mariposa County? Have you ever heard of El Capitan, folks, a vertical rock formation, Yosemite National Park? Danny, I can't believe this. Folks, you got to go to savedemocracyinamerica.org/about. You want to donate to Dan's organization. By the way, he didn't bring this up. We didn't talk about donations. I'm pitching it. You can scroll down, Handsome Devil. There's Dan, and there's El Capitan, and there's a photo of him looking down. Get this. He is a free soloing climber. That means, party people, That means no safety rope. How in God's name do you do that? I hear about that all the time, and it's like, my ass would never, ever climb El Capitan without a safety rope.
Well, no,
I
definitely had a rope and partner, and I had a rope and partner in El Cap, but I did do, this is many years ago in my youth when I was still really into this, but I did a number of climbs, between 200 and 500 feet in height.
Jeez.
And some at extreme difficulty without a rope. The thing is, it's only a tiny minority of climbers do it. You have to have absolute emotional self-control. You cannot allow yourself to think about falling. You have to take your fear of death, lock it in a black box, and tuck it as far in the back of your mind as you can. Because if you start to think about falling, then you're going to fall because you're going to seize up, you're going to tremble, your hands are going to sweat, and so on. So it's an exercise in total concentration and total emotional self-control. But the thing that's so amazing about it is that if you can do that, you feel like you can do anything.
Man, I love you. Annapurna, K2, Kangchen, Jungan, India. I would love to see photos of Dan climbing those. He's like, not going to happen. I am proud of you, Dan. Keep up the good work, folks. It's SaveDemocracyInAmerica.org, or you could go to drdanmcmillan.com. Donate to him, read his information, learn, be an educated voter. Dan, thank you for your time.
Bless you, Tom. Thank you so much.
You too, my friend. Keep up the good work. TomAndersonShow.com.